It wasn't the screaming fans or the blinding stage lights that unnerved Bruno Mars that night. It was the handwritten note waiting for him in his dressing room. 3 chilling words. "You don't belong." Bruno, known for his charm and magnetic stage presence, had just performed at a sold-out concert in a major southern city. The crowd had roared his name, the sound echoing through the packed arena. Yet, as he stepped into his backstage sanctuary, the unsettling message awaited him on his vanity mirror, scrawled in thick black ink. "What's this?" Bruno muttered, his hands trembling slightly as he held the note. His manager, Phil, glanced over his shoulder and froze. "Probably just some deranged fan," Phil said, though his voice betrayed a note of uncertainty. "We'll get security on it." But Bruno knew this wasn't just a random act of mischief. Something in the air, something he couldn't quite explain, told him this was only the beginning. Before becoming the global superstar adored by millions, Bruno had faced countless battles as a biracial artist. Born Peter Jean Hernandez to a Puerto Rican Jewish father and a Filipino mother, he'd grown up in Hawaii, a cultural melting pot. Yet, as his fame grew, so did the scrutiny. Critics often praised his talent but questioned his authenticity. Is he black enough for R&B? Too ethnically ambiguous for pop? These whispers followed him from the underground clubs of LA to the grand stages of the Grammys. Now, standing in his dressing room, he felt the weight of those whispers magnified. Later that night, as Bruno left the venue, surrounded by security, a commotion erupted near the parking lot. A group of protesters held signs with hateful slogans, their chants rising into the cool night air. "Go back to where you came from," one voice shouted. Bruno paused, his heart pounding. He wasn't sure if the protest was targeted at him or if he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Either way, the message was clear. Inside the limousine, Phil tried to lighten the mood. "Ignore them, Bruno. They're just jealous of your success." But Bruno couldn't shake the feeling that this was personal. He stared out of the tinted window, the signs fading into the distance, but their words lingered. The following morning, a mysterious envelope was delivered to Bruno's hotel room. It bore no return address, just his name and elegant script. Inside, he found an invitation to a private event hosted by an influential figure in the music industry. Curiously, the invitation promises a discussion on the challenges of diversity in music. Intrigued, and against Phil's advice, Bruno decided to attend. The event was held at a grand estate on the outskirts of town. Bruno arrived dressed in a sharp suit, ready to engage in what he hoped would be a meaningful dialogue. Instead, he found himself in a room filled with powerful executives who barely acknowledged his presence. As the evening progressed, the discussions turned uncomfortable. One executive leaned in and said, "You're talented, Bruno, no doubt. But let's face it, your success comes from being safe. People don't know what box to put you in, and that's why they accept you, real black artists. Well, they have it harder." Bruno felt his blood boil but remained composed. "So, you're saying my struggles aren't real?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. The room fell silent. On his way back to the hotel, Bruno's car was forced to stop by a sudden roadblock. Out of nowhere, a masked figure approached, throwing a brick at the windshield. The driver quickly reversed, speeding away as Bruno ducked for cover. Back in his room, Bruno received another note slipped under the door. This time it read, "Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." Bruno realized that this was no longer about his music or fame. He had stepped into a larger fight, one that would test his courage, resilience, and identity like never before. Bruno Mars sat in his hotel room, staring at the note in his hands. The letters, bold and menacing, seemed to pulsate with every beat of his racing heart. The threat was no longer subtle. He knew this wasn't just about his music or career. It was about something far more personal and dangerous. "Bruno, you can't just sit here and ignore this," Phil said. Pacing the room, he had a stack of security reports in his hand and an exasperated look on his face. "What am I supposed to do, Phil? Cancel the rest of the tour? Run and hide?" Bruno retorted, his frustration boiling over. "If I back down, they win." Phil stopped pacing and sighed. "At least let me double your security. Whoever's behind this clearly knows how to get close to you. And this," he pointed at the note, "this isn't just some random fan acting out. It's organized." Bruno reluctantly agreed, but deep down, he knew that extra security wouldn't stop the shadowy force behind these threats. The next day, while rehearsing for his upcoming show, Bruno noticed someone lingering in the shadows of the venue. A woman, wearing a simple black coat, stood near the edge of the stage. "Excuse me, ma'am, this is a private area," one of the security guards said, approaching her. She raised her hands in surrender. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here to help." Bruno waved off the guard and approached her cautiously. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Maya," she said. "I work with an organization that monitors hate groups and systemic discrimination in the entertainment industry." Bruno raised an eyebrow. "And you just happen to be here today?" "No," she admitted. "I've been following the threats against you. The protest, the brick, the notes. They're all connected. And it's bigger than you think." Bruno felt a chill run down his spine. "How do you know all this?" "Because I've been tracking these people for years," Maya replied. "They've targeted other artists before, especially those who challenge their narrow definition of who should succeed in this industry." Maya explained that a small but influential group of executives, promoters, and industry insiders had been working behind the scenes to maintain a specific image of mainstream music. Artists like Bruno, who blurred the lines of race, genre, and culture, were seen as threats to their carefully crafted narrative. They've been using intimidation, sabotage, and sometimes even violence to keep artists like you in check, Maya said. Bruno's mind raced. He thought about the hateful signs at the protest, the brick through the windshield, and the chilling notes. It all started to make sense. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because you're not the first," Maya said. "And if you don't fight back, you won't be the last." That evening, Bruno went online to connect with his fans. He posted a cryptic message on social media. "Sometimes the biggest battles are fought in silence. But silence doesn't mean surrender. Stay strong." Within hours, the hashtag exploded. Fans from around the world began sharing their own stories of discrimination, resilience, and hope. Bruno realized that he wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for everyone who had ever felt like they didn't belong. Yet, even as the messages of support poured in, the threats escalated. Another note arrived, this time accompanied by a burnt CD of one of Bruno's earlier songs. The message read, "Stick to the music. Leave the activism to someone else." Determined to uncover the truth, Bruno and Maya began digging deeper. Maya used her network of contacts to trace the origins of the notes and threats, while Bruno reached out to other artists who might have faced similar challenges. One late night, while sifting through old emails and documents, Bruno stumbled upon something shocking. A series of anonymous payments made to protest groups and shadowy organizations, all linked to a high-ranking executive at his label. Bruno's hands trembled as he stared at the evidence. "It's someone on the inside," he whispered. Maya leaned over his shoulder, her face pale. "This isn't just sabotage. This is a coordinated attack, and they're not going to stop." Despite the mounting danger, Bruno refused to cancel his next performance. He believed that the stage was his sanctuary, a place where he could speak his truth through music. The night of the concert, the venue was packed. Fans held signs of support, many bearing the hashtag "Stay Strong." As Bruno stepped onto the stage, he felt a surge of emotion. "Thank you for being here tonight," he said, his voice echoing through the arena. "This isn't just about music. This is about standing together, no matter what tries to tear us apart." The crowd erupted into cheers, but as Bruno launched into his second song, chaos erupted. A loud bang echoed through the venue, and the stage lights flickered. Security rushed in, shouting orders, and the crowd began to panic. Backstage, Bruno was whisked away to safety. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The chaos at the concert left Bruno Mars shaken but resolute. The loud bang that interrupted the performance turned out to be a smoke bomb, planted to incite fear. No one was injured, but the message was clear: his enemies weren't playing games. The aftermath of the incident ignited a media frenzy. News outlets speculated on everything from Bruno's safety to his newfound stance on activism. Social media buzzed with messages of support, but also hateful comments, amplifying the tension. Bruno, however, refused to be silenced. Days after the concert, Bruno sat in a secure recording studio with Maya and his team. The room was heavy with unease, but Bruno's voice broke the silence. "I'm not going to stop," he said firmly. "They can threaten me, try to shut me up, but this is bigger than me now." Maya nodded. "If you're serious about this, we need to expose them. Shine a light on what they're doing. Phil, Usually the voice of caution surprised everyone. If we're doing this, we're doing it smart. We need evidence, witnesses, and a platform big enough to make noise they can't ignore. Bruno looked at his team and then at Maya. Let's go all in. Maya managed to arrange a meeting with someone who could change everything, a former music executive who had worked with Bruno's label. This person, a woman named Lila Sanchez, had left the industry years ago but still carried scars from her time inside. Why should I help you? Lila asked when they met in a discreet cafe. Her tone was guarded, her eyes wary. Because you know what's happening isn't right, Bruno said, his voice sincere. And because staying silent makes you part of it. Lila hesitated, then sighed. They destroyed careers to maintain control. If you didn't fit their mold, they'd blacklist you, humiliate you, or worse. They did it to artists, producers, even executives like me. She handed Maya a flash drive. Here. It's not everything, but it's enough to start peeling back the curtain. Armed with Lila's evidence, Bruno and Maya began crafting a plan. They decided to release a short documentary exposing the corruption and racism in the music industry, using Bruno's platform to amplify the message. The documentary would include testimonies from other artists who had suffered in silence, as well as the damning evidence from the flash drive. The team worked tirelessly, pouring their energy into the project. Every interview, every piece of footage felt like a step closer to justice, and a step deeper into danger. As the documentary neared completion, Bruno received one final note. Unlike the others, this one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, precise, and chilling. You're playing with fire. Drop the documentary, or we'll burn everything you've built to the ground. Bruno stared at the note, his anger simmering. Let them try, he said. Phil, however, was worried. Bruno, this isn't just about your career. This could get violent. Then I'll take the risk, Bruno replied. Because if I back down now, they'll think they can do this to anyone. The documentary premiered on a major streaming platform with minimal notice to avoid sabotage. Within hours, it went viral. The world watched in shock as Bruno and other artists revealed the dark side of the music industry. Fans rallied behind Bruno, flooding social media with messages of support. The hashtag #JusticeOurMusic trended globally. The backlash against the exposed executives was swift and unforgiving. Lawsuits were filed, investigations launched, and several key figures were forced to resign. But the fight wasn't over. Just days after the documentary's release, Bruno's house was set on fire. He and his family escaped unharmed, but the message was clear: his enemies were desperate. Standing outside the smoldering remains of his home, Bruno addressed the gathered reporters. They think they can silence me with fear, he said, his voice unwavering. But all they've done is ignite a fire they'll never put out. The attack only strengthened Bruno's resolve. He used the tragedy to fuel a larger movement, joining forces with activists and other artists to push for systemic change in the industry. Meanwhile, Maya's organization uncovered more connections between the hate groups and influential executives, leading to arrests and further exposure. The fire at Bruno Mars' home marked a turning point, not just for him, but for an industry steeped in secrecy and corruption. The attempt to silence him backfired spectacularly, galvanizing fans, artists, and activists alike. While Bruno and his team dealt with the aftermath, the movement he'd ignited began to spread like wildfire. In the weeks following the fire, Bruno held a press conference, flanked by Maya, Lila Sanchez, and several prominent artists who had also suffered under the industry's oppressive system. We're not here to destroy music, Bruno said, his voice resonating with conviction. We're here to rebuild it into something better, an industry that celebrates diversity instead of fearing it, that nurtures talent instead of controlling it. The crowd erupted in applause, and the press conference was broadcast worldwide. Bruno announced the creation of the Harmony Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting underrepresented artists and exposing systemic injustice in the entertainment industry. The foundation's first initiative was to provide legal aid to artists whose careers had been sabotaged by discriminatory practices. The response was overwhelming. Stories poured in from around the globe, each one a heartbreaking testament to the abuse of power within the industry. Amid the chaos, an unexpected figure reached out to Bruno, one of the high-ranking executives implicated in the scandal. Michael Graves, a former head of promotions at a major label, requested a private meeting. Why should I even listen to you? Bruno asked, his skepticism evident. Graves looked worn, his confidence eroded. Because I'm ready to make things right, he said. I was part of the system, but I didn't realize how deep it went until I couldn't get out. I have information. Records, emails, names that can take this even further. Maya and Leela verified Graves' claims, uncovering a treasure trove of evidence that linked key figures in the industry to hate groups, fraud, and racketeering. With this new information, the Harmony Foundation collaborated with law enforcement to launch a sweeping investigation. As Bruno continued to fight behind the scenes, he prepared for what would become the most important performance of his career, a global benefit concert for the Harmony Foundation. Held at a massive outdoor venue, the concert drew millions of viewers, both in person and online. Artists from every genre joined him, uniting in a celebration of music's power to heal and inspire. Before his final song, Bruno addressed the audience. This stage has always been my safe place, but for too long, I've taken that safety for granted. Tonight, we're reclaiming it. Not just for me, but for every artist who's ever been told they don't belong. This is our anthem of defiance, our promise to never back down. He performed a stirring rendition of a new song, We Belong Here, a powerful ballad about unity and resilience. The crowd sang along, their voices blending into a symphony of hope. The investigations led to the arrest and conviction of several executives, including those who had directly orchestrated the threats against Bruno. The revelations rocked the music industry, forcing labels to overhaul their practices and policies. More importantly, the Harmony Foundation's efforts inspired similar initiatives across other industries, sparking a broader movement for accountability and equity. Months later, Bruno stood outside the rebuilt remains of his home, now transformed into a community space for young artists. The walls were adorned with murals depicting the history of music, from its roots in diverse cultures to its role in modern activism. Maya joined him, holding a small box. "This arrived for you," she said, handing it over. Bruno opened it to find a handwritten note. "Thank you for not giving up. You've inspired more than you'll ever know." For the first time in months, Bruno felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had faced the darkness, and while the battle wasn't over, he knew they had won something invaluable, a chance to create real change. Bruno's journey became a symbol of resilience and courage, proving that even in the face of systemic oppression, one voice could spark a revolution. Years later, as he accepted a humanitarian award at a global music ceremony, he reflected on the struggle that had nearly broken him. "The stage will always be where I feel most alive," he said. "But the fight for justice, that's where I found my purpose." The crowd rose to its feet, their applause a testament to the power of truth and the enduring legacy of an artist who refused to be silenced.